Look beyond the obvious choices in the supermini segment and you might be surprised at what you'll find. Take this 4th generation Kia Rio, a smartly styled supermini that challenges for class honours in a way that will suit sensibly-minded buyers. It's pretty spacious, easy to drive and very affordable to run, especially in diesel form or when fitted out with the brand's impressive 1-litre T-GDI petrol engine. Plus, prices are pitched keenly and you get a 7-year warranty. It is, in short, a very competitive car indeed.
The motor industry has learned to take Korean maker Kia very seriously indeed. And here is the brand's global bestseller, the 4th generation Rio Supermini. If you want an accurate perspective on Kia's progress over the last couple of decades, then the Rio model line amply provides it. The 1st generation design, launched at the turn of the century, was an embarrassment. The Mark II model of 2005 progressed to the status of cheap and relatively cheerful, and the 3rd generation version of 2011 was properly class competitive. From that point though, there's still quite a step to genuine desirability. So can this Mark IV model make it? Kia has gone all out to try and ensure that it can. Now, prior to the launch of this car in early 2017, design teams on 3 continents worked on the smarter styling, and the body is stiffer and safer. Plus, there's the option of up-to-the-minute media connectivity, and buyers can select a punchy yet frugal, state-of-the-art 3-cylinder turbo petrol engine. You also get a classier cabin and one of the largest luggage bays in the segment, all packaged up with an industry-leading 7-year warranty and pricing able to undercut most mainstream rivals. Sounds promising, doesn't it? Let's put this car to the test. Accepted wisdom from supposed industry experts like what car appears to be that Ford's Fiesta leads the supermini sector. And since that's not the best value, the best equipped, the most practical or the best package model out there, that determination is presumably based on handling dynamics, the least important small car attribute to most buyers. Now, with the Rio, Kia has designed the supermini around the people who actually buy it. So it's fair to say that in the design phase, on the limit handling wasn't exactly top of the priority list. Even so, this one still manages to be one of the better cars in the class to drive, which will be a revelation for customers graduating to this Kia from earlier Rio models, although there won't be very many of them. So, what will you notice if you come to this car more familiar with a commoner supermini, say a Vauxhall Corsa, a Peugeot 208, a Renault Clio, Volkswagen's Polo, or yes, even a Ford Fiesta? Well, drive a Rio for any length of time on our appalling British roads, and you might well conclude that it rides better than many of its rivals. Yet, there is no penalty to pay for this when it comes to the twisty stuff. So yes, it is true that Fiesta, but only the Fiesta, is more composed and responsive when you throw it into a corner, and it does generally feel sharp to drive. Having said that though, the difference between the two cars in that respect wouldn't be that great if this Kia wasn't saddled with the electric power steering setup that's still rather vague, despite recent efforts from the Korean engineers to improve it. Now, you'll appreciate that around town though, where it facilitates a now tighter 10.2 metre turning circle. Overall then, a strong showing, which comes courtesy of the considerable efforts Kia has made in trying to improve the design fundamentals of this 4th generation model. Key to this is the creation of a much stiffer body this time around, which allows the suspension to do its work without having to compensate for flexing in the chassis structure. That, along with a set of revised spring and damper settings, reduces roll through the bends, yet at the same time you get the impressive ride quality standards we just mentioned. It really takes a challenging set of tarmac tears to properly unsettle this car. Out on the open road, there's more good news. There aren't many small cars in this class that are more refined at higher speeds, and as a result, this Rio is a surprisingly able partner for longer trips. The manual gearbox is also slick, and the brakes are very good too, all of which will almost certainly be more important to potential segment buyers than outright speed, which is just as well, because the Rio lineup doesn't really offer too much of that. The mainstream engine range, including a few of the kind of power power plants that would really tempt in more spirited drivers. That's not to say that there aren't some effective engines in the Rio portfolio these days. There absolutely are, with the headline act being the 3-cylinder 998cc turbo petrol unit that we're trying here. That's the power plant that Kia has developed to take on the similar downsized 3-pot engines that are now available from most of the other brands in the segment. Like the most familiar of these, Ford's 1-litre EcoBoost power plant, this Rio's 1-litre T-GDI unit comes with a choice of outputs, either 99 bhp or 118 bhp. Now, since both of these options develop the same 171 Nm torque figure, it's no surprise to find that there's not much of a discernible performance difference between the two out on the road, although the Korean brand insists that the Kia variant improves the rest to 62 miles an hour time from 10.3 to 9.8 seconds. Kia, like Ford, has chosen not to bless this 3-cylinder engine with a balancer shaft to improve its refinement. Now, the rival Peugeot 208 similarly configured 3-cylinder PureTech unit shows just what a difference that can make, dialing out the buzzy thrumminess you get under hard acceleration in a 1-litre Rio. Still, as with the EcoBoost Power Fiesta, the sensation isn't unpleasant, and it could even be said to add something to the character of the car. The only drawback with the 1-litre T-GDI option appears to be the money that it costs Kia to build it, meaning the need for the more affordable Rio variants to continue on with a couple of substantially less efficient, normally aspirated petrol engines for the brand's older Kappa family of power plants. So, for buyers at the foot of the lineup, that means an 83 bhp 1.25 litre unit that makes 62 mph in 12.5 seconds en route to 107 miles an hour. A little further up the range, there's a freshly introduced 1.4 litre petrol unit with 98 bhp, and that improves those figures to 11.8 seconds and 108 miles an hour. And it's the only engine in the range that can be ordered with the option of automatic transmission, and that's a dated and very inefficient 4-speed unit. Try the 1-litre model we've got here on test, and you won't want to bother with either of those Kappa engine variants, although of course in all of this we are assuming that as a buyer your priorities will lie with petrol power. Now, if that's not the case and you want to swim against the tide of prevailing public opinion and consider a diesel, then there are two 1.4 litre CRDI options offered in a choice of either 76 or 89 bhp. To be frank, we can't really see why you'd buy the Kia unit. It only comes with pricey top spec trim, and it offers exactly the same pulling power, 240 Newton meters, as its lesser stablemate. For what they're worth, the basic performance stats see the 76 bhp unit making 62 miles an hour from rest in 13.5 seconds en route to 102 miles an hour, while the 89 bhp variant improves those figures to 11.6 seconds and 108 mph. That is if you're quick with the manual stick shift, a 6-speeder on the diesel variants, as is also the case with the petrol 1.4 and the Kia of the two 1-litre T-GDI units. Otherwise, your Rio will be featuring a 5-speed box. The days of affordable Kia models betraying all the hallmarks of budget brand design are long gone. So are the days when a supermini was a relatively diminutive thing. This 4th generation Rio is not only a smartly turned out, maturely styled contender, but also a car that a decade ago would have been seen as a competitor for a bigger family hatchback Astra or Focus, rather than a supermini sized Corsa or Fiesta. You notice that particularly here in profile, where there's a 15mm increase in length this time around and bigger front overhangs that have freed up space for a longer, sleeker bonnet that complements a 10mm reduction in roof height. Now, the key character line is emphasised on this top model by this chrome strip along the bottom of the side windows. It flows from the headlights right back to the tail lamps. Further down, concave shaping gives the flanks some shape above a lower character line that separates wheel arches, housing rims that can be anything between 15 and 17 inches in size, depending on the trim level you selected. And at the front, well, if like us you disapprove of design by committee, you might have feared the worst here. The new styling, a combined effort from Kia's design teams in Europe, the USA and South Korea. As it is, the finished result is confident and actually quite smart, if not especially memorable. So we get yet another interpretation of the brand's trademark tiger nose front grille, which is now wider and narrower, blending into bifunction projector headlights that come with LED daytime running lights. Further down, there's a glossy crossbar stretched across the centre air intake for the number plate, while either side this body-coloured bumper wraps around side vents, incorporating neat circular projector fog lights that are standard across the range. Move to the back and the clean looks continue. The sleeker rear light clusters stretch from the rear pillars into a hatch section featuring glasswork that's now almost vertical. In between the lamps is this prominent boot release handle, so there's no need to fumble for it under the lower lip of the tailgate. There's quite a few rivals force you to do. Lower down, this registration plate sits in the middle of this diffuser style black plastic section, which adds a slightly sporting feel to this sensible Super Mini. Of course, as usual, what's more important is the stuff you can't see. Primarily in this case, the fact that the stiffer body shell now uses a much higher proportion of high strength steel, 51% to be exact, compared with 33% in the previous model. Time to take a seat inside, where those still harbouring perceptions of Kia as a budget brand will be further disabused of that notion. True, in this case, things have been embellished a bit. This up-spec variant features faux leather upholstery, premium automatic air conditioning system, and this large and sophisticated-looking 7-inch colour infotainment screen. Even mainstream variants, though, get features like this lovely stitched leather multifunction steering wheel, through which you view a smart instrument binnacle, where the two main dials are separated by a 3.5-inch Supervision cluster digital display. Getting comfortable at the wheel is easy thanks to plenty of wheel and seat adjustment, and there's more room for front seat folk this time around. Now that's something the dashboard has been redesigned to emphasise, with straight lines supposed to give the impression of spacious width and angling that's a little more driver orientated. The soft touch plastic is still a little shiny for our tastes, but classy piano black trimmed horizontally shaped air vents now feature at either end of the fascia, and there's a cleaner look thanks to the significant reduction in the number of switches and buttons, courtesy of a centre stack that's now fashioned to incorporate a more, well, 21st century approach to in-car entertainment. Avoid entry-level trim, and this is where you'll find a colour monitor that'll deal with most of your motoring media needs, with a 5-inch display provided on mid-range models, and as I mentioned previously, this 7-inch touchscreen supplied at the top of the lineup. It's complete with navigation on a full suite of Kia connected services. These include Wi-Fi options and the opportunity to link in your smartphone via either Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Now, plus partnership with TomTom allows this 7-inch system to offer things like full UK postcode entry, speed camera location warnings, and live updates on traffic and weather, along with fast, short or economical route planning. One of the issues with the previous generation version of this car lay in its slightly restricted levels of all-round visibility, especially when you were trying to reverse. Now that has been well and truly dealt with this time around, thanks to thinner C-pillars, relocated door mirrors, and new rear quarter lights, also a lower window line. Now just to make sure, Kia also provides rear parking sensors and a rear view camera as standard, provided you avoid entry-level trim. Now cabin storage has been improved too, although this Korean brand still insists on putting the USB, the aux-in and the 12-volt phone connecting ports on a prominent display in front of the gear stick rather than in a lidded storage box that will allow you to conceal your handset away from prying eyes. This deep bin behind the thankfully conventional handbrake would be perfect for that. As it is, your Apple or Android device has to sit in this tray in front of the gear stick. A couple of cup holders feature further back, plus the glove box is of an adequate size, and the front door bins can each hold a 1.5 litre bottle. We're also pleased to see that Kia has remembered to include an overhead compartment for your sunglasses. So let's take a seat in the rear, where you'd hope this 4th generation model's increase in width and length might pay dividends. Now the 10mm of extra wheelbase does certainly benefit legroom back here, only if the front seat occupants happen to be particularly tall will there be any significant restrictions. Segment rivals like Volkswagen's Polo and Suzuki's Baleno do better here, but since in most cases Rio owners will only be carrying children or adults over short distances, what's provided by this Kia is likely to be deemed quite sufficient by most likely owners. As usual with a car of this kind, you'd certainly struggle to fit 3 fully sized folk across the rear bench, although if that was ever necessary, this low centre transmission tunnel would make things a bit easier. There's no central armrest. Rather meanly, Kia only provides a mat pocket in the back of the left-hand seat. On the plus side, you don't really notice this 4th generation model's 15mm reduction in roof height. Also, there are 2 Isofix child seat mountings for the 2 outer seats, and it's possible to stash a 0.5 litre bottle in each of the doors. It's also worth pointing out that the Rio is the first car in this segment to offer a USB port not only in the front but also here at the back, so enabling mobile devices to be charged from any seat in the car. So let's finish with a few words on boot space, which has risen by 37 litres over the previous model. The tailgate's light to lift and it reveals a 325 litre luggage area. It's one of the very largest in the supermini segment. The load bay is well shaped too, with little intrusion either from the wheel arches or the suspension turrets. Plus you get a wide opening and a low lip, although from that there is quite a drop to the cargo floor. An adjustable boot floor would deal with that, but Kia doesn't offer one. Beneath the base, there's nothing more than a tyre mobility kit, because this brand, like many of its contemporaries, irritatingly refuses to supply any sort of spare wheel as part of the standard spec. Smaller items can be stored in this little cubby set in the left-hand wall, while longer loads are dealt with by folding down one or both of the 60/40 split rear backrests. With these folded, the area provided isn't quite flat, but it is reasonably spacious, with 980 litres of fresh air on offer. Now, if you are going to use all that, you might want to use the securing hooks that are provided to keep more sizable goods safely in place. So, what will it cost to buy a Rio and what will you get for the money? Well, let's see. There are 3 simple trim designations, 1, 2 and 3, and a single 5-door body style. Now at the foot of the range, prices start at around £12,000 for the base 83 bhp 1.25 litre petrol variant, with buyers offered the option of paying £1,500 more for the 76 bhp version of the frugal 1.4 litre CRDI diesel model. Most Rio customers, though, choose the mid-range 2 spec, where the engine range widens to include 2 more petrol engines, both with similar outputs of around 100 bhp. Now, the one to have is the sophisticated 99 bhp 1 litre T-GDI 3-cylinder unit we're trying here, and it's well worth the small premium over its old-tech 4-cylinder 98 bhp 1.4 litre petrol counterpart, although at this Rio model's launch, the 1.4 was the only unit in the range that could be ordered with automatic transmission, and that's a £750 option. Now, if you can stretch right to the top of the range, you'll find a pokier 89 bhp version of the 1.4 litre CRDI diesel and a quicker 118 bhp version of the 1 litre T-GDI petrol unit. By that point, though, you'll be shelling out well over £17,000. So much for the pricing. What about the value proposition those figures represent? Well, if you know your cars, you might think the most obvious competitor to put up against this Rio would be the supermini that shares nearly everything with it under the skin, the Hyundai i20. Direct comparisons between those 2 models, though, aren't really that easy, because there's a different mix of engines and specs. If you sift through these, though, you might well conclude that Hyundai offers a slightly better value for diesel buyers, but there's really not much in it if you opt for the entry-level 1.25 litre petrol unit. If you are looking at the 1 litre T-GDI petrol power plant that we'd recommend, then this Kia offers it for about £1,000 less than you'd pay to have the same engine in an i20. It's more likely, though, that potential Rio buyers will be considering a supermini from one of the mainstream brands. Now, if that is the case, then you'll find that this Kia stacks up pretty well. The car is comparably priced to competitors like Renault's Clio and Toyota's Yaris, and it undercuts rivals like Vauxhall's Corsa and Seat's Ibiza by a little, and models like Ford's Fiesta, Peugeot's 208, Nissan's Micra and Volkswagen's Polo by quite a lot. Now, true, you could save a little in this segment by opting for a Citroen C3 or a Skoda Fabia, but the difference to this Kia really wouldn't be very great. For any significant price savings over this Rio, then you'd have to compromise on quality and opt for a bargain basement brand supermini model like Dacia Sandero or the MG3, something that for many supermini buyers isn't really a very tempting prospect. That clues you into how the Rio's pricing places this car into the supermini market, but it might also be pertinent to make a few more specific observations with regard to its positioning against its rivals. First, we mentioned that if you're wisely wanting the kind of new tech 1 litre 3-cylinder turbo petrol engine that most brands now offer, this Rio's 1 litre T-GDI unit is one of the most affordable options out there. Let's just take one example. It'll save you around £1,000 over a comparable Ford Fiesta 1 litre EcoBoost model. Now, the second observation that we'd make is that there aren't many cheaper choices you could make if you want diesel power in a supermini of this sort. So typically in this segment, you need at least £15,000 for a diesel powered variant. In the Rio range, a 1.4 litre CRDI model comes in at around £1,500 below that price point. If, having considered all of that, you conclude that it is a Rio that you really want, then you're going to need to know just how generous Kia has been with the standard spec. So let's take a look at that. Now, as you'd expect, base 1 spec trim mostly limits you to the basics, but you do still get air conditioning, auto headlamps, front fog lamps, LED daytime running lights, and Bluetooth with music streaming, as well as powered heated mirrors, front electric windows, and a 4-speaker audio system with USB and aux in ports. Almost certainly, though, you'll be wanting to at least trade up to a Rio with the mid-spec 2 trim level. That'll be recognisable by a chrome-framed front grille and 15-inch alloy wheels. Other 2 trim features include a much nicer cabin, includes smarter upholstery, a centre console armrest and storage box, an upgraded 3.5-inch instrument binnacle screen, and a 5-inch colour centre dash infotainment monitor. It also includes a rear view camera. Now, at this level, you also get cruise control with a speed limiter, power folding mirrors, rear parking sensors, and rear electric windows. Now, in case you're wondering, here we have taken a step further up the range and opted for a Rio with a plusher 3-level trim. Now, this includes larger 16-inch alloys, rain-sensing wipers, chrome window trim and rear privacy glass. The cabin has black faux leather upholstery and heat for the seats and the steering wheel, plus helpful touches like auto wipers, an auto-dimming rear view mirror, a useful quick defog system and automatic air conditioning so you can preset a temperature. At this level, the infotainment monitor grows in size to 7 inches and it gains touchscreen functionality, voice recognition, satellite navigation and TomTom powered Kia connected services, which will allow you to connect in your smartphone via either Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Other features in this setup include a live traffic feature that warns you of hold-ups ahead, speed camera alerts, weather forecasts and local search system that'll help you find shops, restaurants and places of interest. So much for the standard stuff. What about options? Well, there aren't many. Your dealer will give you the chance to pay extra for various metallic paint shades, and the premium 3.5-inch Supervision cluster instrument layout can be added into a base 1-spec Rio at extra cost. In addition, you can add sporty decals to the mirrors and the bodywork, plus there are usual mud flaps and carpet mats, plus there's a boot area mat or a trunk liner to protect the cargo bay. Protective foils can be stuck onto the rear bumper and the door sills, and you can also add in side door mouldings, LED footwell illumination, roof bars and a detachable tow bar if you want to. Otherwise, that's it. If you want plusher levels of kit, then you have to buy into a plush level of spec. So let's finish by looking at this car from a safety perspective. Now, the stiffer body is good news in this regard, but there's also a lot else to talk about. It's now no longer acceptable to launch a supermini that can't be fitted out with autonomous emergency braking, one of those systems that scans the road ahead as you drive in search of potential accident hazards before automatically braking if you don't respond to warnings. Now, provided you avoid entry-level trim, you'll get that feature on your Rio, and in a form that'll incorporate specific pedestrian detection too, to deal with the nightmare scenario of some thoughtless person stepping off the pavement right in front of you. Now, another key safety addition above entry-level trim is a lane departure warning system, and this will alert you if your Rio starts wandering over the road markings. Now, both these features are optional if you buy in at base 1-spec trim level. As for more standard safety stuff, well, every Rio offers twin front side and curtain airbags, as well as ESC, electronic stability control, and VSM, vehicle stability management. Newly added electronic features include cornering brake control, which delivers asymmetrical brake pressure to counter loss of traction when you're braking in tight curves, and a straight line stability feature, which senses any difference in applied brake pressure between the right and the left of the car and intervenes to keep it straight. In addition, ABS brakes have a brake assist feature that helps in emergency stops, and those will be advertised to following motorists by an emergency stop signalling feature that flashes a hazard to let them know what's going on. And there's also ISOFIX child seat mountings, a tyre pressure monitoring system that keeps an eye out for punctures, and hill start assist control to prevent the car from rolling backwards when you're starting off on inclines. Most supermini buyers want petrol rather than diesel power, and the way that green pump motoring now tends to work in this segment is rather counterintuitive in that more power gets you much lower running costs. Now that's because at entry level with most small hatches you'll be offered old tech engines that have been kept on to keep the prices low. The cutting-edge 3-cylinder turbo petrol units that really ought to have been standardised in superminis by now usually feature with extra power further up the range, and it's these engines that really deliver the goods in terms of a combination of power and efficiency that you'll be wanting. The Rio lineup is typical in this respect. So at entry level you get normally aspirated 1.25 and 1.4 litre petrol units from Kia's Kappa engine family that are broadly unremarkable in terms of the returns they offer. Above these power plants sits the one that you'll probably want, the T-GDI unit that we're trying here. Now, as is de rigueur with such engines in small cars, this one follows the same 3-cylinder turbo 1 litre format that you'd find in, say, a 1 litre EcoBoost Fiesta or a 1 litre direct injection Corsa. The figures it delivers are pretty similar to the readings you get from those competitors too. So think 62.8 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 102 grams per kilometre of CO2 from the 99 bhp model we're trying here, or 60.1 mpg and 107 grams per kilometre if you trade up to the Pokia 118 bhp version of that unit. Sure enough, in both cases the figures are better than those you get from the cheaper, lower tech, normally aspirated Kappa units we mentioned. To be specific, an 83 bhp 1.25 litre Rio manages 58.8 miles per gallon and 109 grams per kilometre, while a 98 bhp 1.4 litre Rio delivers 56.5 mpg and 114 grams per kilometre. Go for the auto gearbox with a 1.4 litre petrol engine and the returns do take quite a tumble to 46.3 miles per gallon and 140 grams per kilometre. Now that's because the auto doesn't get the engine stop-start system that's fitted to all the manual models as part of the brand's Ecodynamics efficiency package. If you do happen to be set on a diesel, then both 1.4 litre CRDI units offer the potential for very decent frugality, with the 76 bhp unit returning 80.7 mpg on the combined cycle and 92 grams per kilometre of CO2, and the 89 bhp variant delivering 74.3 mpg and 98 grams per kilometre. Now that is quite a credible showing from what is now quite an old engine within the Kia lineup, and it's helped by the fact that on a diesel Rio you get a set of low rolling resistance tyres. As a result, the brand seems well on track to meet its stated target of reducing the average fuel consumption and CO2 emission levels of its model range by 25% by the year 2020. What else might you need to know? Well, if you're coming to this car from a previous generation model, you'll find that the driving range will be slightly greater, a combination of efficiency improvements and the fact that the 45 litre fuel tank is 2 litres bigger than before. As for servicing, well, the petrol variants need regular garage visits every 12 months or 10,000 miles, while the diesels double that mileage to 20,000 miles. And as usual with a Kia, you can budget ahead with prepaid servicing plans. That's courtesy of the brand's Care 3 package. And that offers a fixed price deal covering your first 3 garage visits, and that's a package that can be extended to include 5 visits if you go for the upgraded Care 3 Plus option. You can also bundle an MOT test in with this, and on that basis you'll have the peace of mind of knowing that virtually all maintenance costs will probably be covered for the entire time that your name's going to be on the logbook. Residual values, well, they look set to be quite strong by the standards of mainstream branded superminis in this segment. Think in terms of this Korean hatch retaining around 45% of its new price after 3 years and 30,000 miles, and you shouldn't be too far out. The much trumpeted 7-year, 100,000 mile warranty helps in that regard, since, like the Kia Rio servicing packages, that is transferable to future buyers when you sell the car on. However, it is worth pointing out that the bumper-to-bumper complete car warranty is only 5 years. The extra 2 years of cover are restricted to the engine and the gearbox. If the car is sold through a Kia used approved dealership when it's less than 18 months old or with less than 18,000 miles on the clock, then the warranty will be topped up to match that of a new model. And finally, well, you might also want to note that roadside assistance cover is limited to 1 year, but you do get a long 12-year bodywork warranty. As for insurance, well, groupings start at Group 5 for the petrol 1.4 or Group 6 for the petrol 1.25 litre model. This petrol 1 litre T-GDI variant is rated at Group 8 in 99 bhp form, or Group 9 if you go for the 118 bhp model. As for the diesels, well, the 76 bhp 1.4 litre CRDI derivative is rated at either Group 2 or Group 4, depending on spec, and the Pokia 89 bhp version of that same engine is rated at Group 7. It's easy to see why Kia is one of the fastest growing car makers in the world, doubling its global sales over the last few years thanks to a range of models that are now seriously troubling the European market's established players. And here's another one that'll add to their concerns: smartly styled, sensibly spacious and quite acceptably efficient. As a result, it not only competes head-on with its mainstream rivals, but it betters many of them. The Rio then is a model that's come of age. In considering one, your initial expectation might be of a car with an appeal based mainly on its generous equipment and its relatively modest asking price. Get up close and personal with this Kia though, and it doesn't take long to appreciate that there's a lot more than that on offer here. True, it isn't the most dynamic supermini in the sector to drive, but it is one of the better ones in the class to ride in, which is arguably more important. Now, if Kia could complete the package with a more sophisticated engine range, then the opposition really would start to worry. As it is, the impressive 1 litre T-GDI petrol unit that we've been trying here represents just a taste of what's to come. In summary, if you're thinking of buying in the supermini segment, you may not be considering this car as an option, but take it from us, you should be.